Okay, good morning. Hi, Pro. Welcome back. Nice to see you. That's what I'm told. Okay, good. Morning, Ward. How are you? Good morning.
Next Friday. Can I go to your office and have them a copy?
Yeah, just bring them to me.
I copy them?
Just bring them to me. I'll take care of it. Yeah.
But I got to get married?
Yeah, bring them to me. I'll take care of it. Okay, good morning. What? If you call me on my phone, I'll meet you. If you want to drive over, but call me on your way over and I'll meet you, and that way you can take care of it, okay? Because I'm here anyway. How you doing?
I'm good.
How's your wife? She okay? Living large?
She's, enjoying as much sleep as she can get.
Idea. Over here. Hi, good morning. Good morning, everyone. I'm going to refix this mic. Shabbat Shalom. And Shabbat Shalom to everyone who's watching. This morning, first of all, happy end of June. And this morning, I know there's lots of people who went to the big demonstration downtown, and lots of people on vacation. It's the 4th of July weekend. So, happy Independence Day. Come in. Be at home. Following our study this morning, you're all invited into the Nizhnik Sanctuary. This morning is a morning of wonderful blessings. We have 3 wonderful blessings to offer. Scott Howard, who's the president of the synagogue, this is his last Shabbos as president of the synagogue, and as we'll talk about in a few moments in the shul, it's been a momentous term of office. Scott had basically a fatal liver disease, and in the course of this was given a transplant at UCLA after spending 8 weeks in ICU, and is fine. He's here. It's like a miracle kind of thing, and just a remarkable recovery. So we want to give him a blessing and thank him for his service and time to the shul. This is also the last official Shabbat for Chris Harden, our music director, in residence. Angie's here. He and Angie are moving up to Portland, Oregon, which used to be a really nice town until everybody from LA moved there. And now it looks just a lot like here. It's a beautiful town. We want to wish them our blessings on their new life together. Chris will be back monthly to lead service. He'll be here for holidays, so we're not going to miss him too much, but we're going to offer them blessings on their new life together and wish them great success in their new home. And that's the second blessing. And then this morning, it's a lovely celebration. There's a young man named Udi Shmueli, a member of our community. He's an actor, among other things, and he's celebrating his, he's 39, so it's his 3rd bar mitzvah. Okay, you have 13, 26, 39, 52, 65, 78, 91. It's his 3rd bar mitzvah. And he wanted to do a celebration of this moment in his life. He's come to a certain moment, so he's learned the Torah and the Haftorah, prepared some words for us, and we're going to give him a blessing and a Kiddush cup with his name on it. A lovely celebration. So Udi's family and friends are here to celebrate with him as well. So lovely blessings this morning, and everybody, of course, is invited. We are going to continue with Torah study through not the last week in July, but the second to the last week in July. So July 28th, there will be no Torah study, and we will take a hiatus, that is a vacation, through July 28th through the first week in September. And we'll continue the first week in September, which I think is Labor Day weekend. And we'll have, and Slichus is that night, and we'll begin that weekend, okay? So if you have a hunger for Torah, you can go online, courtesy of Dr. Bob's generosity, and watch last year's series, of the same Torah readings, and lots of other good opportunities. And we'll continue from the last week in July. We'll continue the first week in September. But we're here through July, so come on back, okay? And Tisha B'Av is not this Saturday night. I think it's 2 Saturday nights from now. And you're all invited that evening. We'll be joining with Gad Ariel here at VBS and doing a reading of the traditional Book of Lamentation and a study of some sources on how the whole world falls apart. Everybody good? Good. So that's all the announcements for today. Anybody else have any good announcements? Yeah? We're still working on it. I think we're going to do something on Jewish food. Imagine that. The social history of Jewish food. So falafel, babka, bagels, bialys, gefilte fish, Ashkenazi, Sephardic, the social history of Jewish food. Right? Something for the summertime. Okay? If you have a chumash, it's on page 894. Hi. Yes. Hey, it's Parashat Balak, halfway through the book of Numbers. It's in the Eitz Chaim Chumash on page 894. We welcome everybody watching TV. Whatever Bible you have, look for, it's Numbers chapter 22. How's that? Numbers is the 4th book of the Hebrew Bible. Good enough? Is that better? There you go. I'm trying to help. This is, I'm going to try really hard to avoid political allusions today. Like, I'm not going to tell you that this is a policy born of fear of immigrants, but I'm not going to say any of that. What I am going to say is that this is if last week was the saddest Torah portion in the book, because last week, as I argued, last week was a meditation on death and the reality of death and what it means to live as a finite, mortal human being, this week is the weirdest Torah portion, without a doubt. Because the story, first of all, the narrative breaks. From the beginning of the Torah, or at least the third parsha of the Torah, let's say, Lech Lecha, we have been focused on the people Israel. We have followed the story of the people Israel, of Abraham and Isaac and Jacob and Joseph, and the enslavement in Egypt, and Moses' rise. Come in, there's plenty of room. Moses is growing up, and the plague story, and Pharaoh's finally relenting, and the crossing of the Red Sea, and the crossing of the desert, and we arrived at Mount Sinai, and the gift of Torah at Mount Sinai, and all the laws and traditions given at Mount Sinai, and then we left Mount Sinai and began the journey, and up till now we've been discussing the journey from Sinai to Canaan. And the focus is always on this people and its experience. That's the subject of the story. But for some strange reason, in this Torah portion, the scene completely shifts. And we are not the subject of the story. We are its object. We are part of the story. We become the background, and somebody else becomes the foreground. Look at the first line of the Torah portion. Balak, son of Tzipor, saw all that Israel had done to the Amorites. Balak is the king of a country called Moab, a tribe called Moab. Moab lives, if you can imagine the map of Israel, imagine where the Dead Sea is. Imagine on the other side of the Dead Sea, in the country that today we call Jordan, that's Moab, right? Southern Jordan is Moab. It's a desert area, but there are civilizations there because there are springs, and where there are springs, there are towns. And where there are towns, there's agriculture and herding of animals. That's Moab. The Israelites are moving westward across the desert toward Canaan. They came the long way around, and they're moving westward toward Canaan. In order to get to Canaan, you have to pass through the territories of a number of different tribes. If you read the book of Genesis, all of these tribes are our cousins. They're all relatives of ours. In other words, we're all Semitic peoples. Moab, if you remember the story of the origins of Moab, Moab was the product of Lot's daughters, remember? And Moab is where Ruth is going to come from, right? But before that, the story was that, Sodom and Gomorrah are being destroyed. Lot and his two daughters take refuge in a cave. The daughters think they're the only three human beings left in the world, so they seduce their father. It's an incestuous relationship, and of that is born Moab. Of that is born Lot is our cousin. I mean, we're mishpacha, and there is an ethic of the desert, and the ethic of the desert is safe passage. We're not coming to conquer you. We just want to pass through your land. We will not touch anything. Anything we touch, break, or damage, we will pay for. That was what Moses said to the kings of the Amorites, the people who live beyond Moab, but they went to war with us, and Moses and his people smashed them. So one morning, the king of Moab wakes up, and there's 3.5 million Jews on his front lawn. And he's terrified, because he's heard they destroyed the Egyptians, they destroyed the Amorites, they've destroyed the Amalekites, they've destroyed every tribe they've come into contact with, and he's terrified. Now, what's the irony of that? The irony of that is that 3 weeks ago, we read a story about 12 spies going into Canaan, remember? And the 12 spies go into Canaan, and they came out with what report? It's a land of milk and honey. It's everything you promised, except it's inhabited by giants, by monsters, by dinosaurs. It's Jurassic Jews. And we can't have that land. We will never have that land because we were as bugs in their sight. Well, now for just a moment, the Torah plays a game. It's this perception game. You think you were bugs in their sight? Let me tell you what you really look like in their sight. They're terrified of you. They're more afraid of you than you were ever afraid of them. They're terrified of you because what are you? You're 3.5 million desert tribal people marching in order through the desert. You have smashed every civilization you've come into contact with. This is, by the way, one of the classic cultural clashes in human history. The nomad against the settled people. The nomadic people against the settled people. In America, for those of you who like old movies, this is Cowboys and Indians. What are Cowboys and Indians? Cowboys were settled Europeans who were ranching the American West, and Indians were nomadic people who were displaced by the settlements of the Europeans, and so the Indians attacked the settlers because they wanted to get their land back. Cowboys and Indians, right? This is one of the classic sort of tropes of human culture. The unattacked wanderer against the settled civilization. And settled civilization is terrified that peoples are going to come out of nowhere and attack us. As a matter of fact, there's a movie called Independence Day. I don't recommend it, right? Although it was mildly entertaining when it came out. And it's the same story. You have these nomadic spacemen who arrive on Earth in order to destroy our planet. Get the picture? Right? And then they made a second one because one wasn't bad enough. They had to make it worse, right? Second one wasn't nearly as good as the first, and the first wasn't good. But in the realm of bad movies, it was a pretty good bad movie. There are good bad movies and bad movies. This was a pretty good bad movie. But this notion of the desert people, the wanderers, the rootless people coming to attack the settlers, this is an old trope. This is an old theme in human consciousness. And here he wakes up one morning, and what does he see on his front stoop? 3.5 million Jews. And his first words in Moabite were something like, "Oh, boy," right? Right. Build a wall. Build a wall. No. This is exactly what it is. That, by the way, there's 1 million refugees in the world right now. And the question is, if you read Tom Friedman's column this week, if you haven't read it, it's very good. The world of order and the world of disorder. And the world of disorder is migrating toward the world of order. And the world of order doesn't know what to do about it. And that really is the issue. It's a very interesting, if you get away from all of the Nazi talk and really ask the question, what should a settled country, what should be the immigration policy of a settled country in a global world? And that really is a very interesting question, a very, very serious political and cultural question. A country that prides itself on being a country of asylum seekers, refugees, and immigrants who made good. Because every one of us came from someplace else seeking the exact same thing. But now we look out in the world and there are so many millions beyond the ones that made it to our borders. And the question is, who do you let in and who don't you let in? And it's a very serious, and how do you know who they really are? It's a very serious question. And if we could get away from the shouting and the screaming and the name calling, it's a very serious question both of the culture of this country and its security. It's a very, very serious political and cultural question. But of course we can't get away from the screaming, so all we do is shout at each other, and that's why there's no policy right now. All of this improvised stuff, and when you improvise policy, you end up with bad policy. That you can quote me on. And that's exactly what we've seen these last couple of weeks, is improvised policies. No policy, but what they're trying to improvise keeps coming out wrong. And that's the problem, because there's no base. And because the question that we're asking is a very serious question. National borders matter very little anymore. In the realm of population movements, in the realm of economics. I mean, the other side of this is the trade policy. I don't know if you know this, but Harley-Davidson's now a French motorcycle company. Go figure, right? But the question, because in the movement of capital, of goods, of labor, there are, again, no boundaries in the global markets. And this becomes a great question of what is nationalism in a time when economics are international. It's a very, very interesting set of questions if you can get away from the shouting and the name calling. And the funny thing is, there's a lot to be said to each other. So come back to who we are. I'm not making moral judgments. I'm just pointing out my job isn't to solve problems, just to tell you we have them. Everybody go, oi. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you very much. Moab was alarmed. Moab was alarmed that the people were so numerous. Does that sound familiar to anybody? You're going to hear echoes of the other stories, right? It sounds a lot like Pharaoh, right. Pharaoh was alarmed, remember, because this people was so numerous. Moab dreaded the Israelites. And Moab said to the elders of Midian, Midian is another tribe, but Midian is actually a nomadic tribe. Now this horde will lick clean all that is about us as an ox licks up the grass of the field. So Moab reaches out to allies in order to form a bulwark against the influx of this horde of desert Israelites. Balak, son of Zippor, who was king of Moab at the time, sent messengers to Balaam, son of Beor, in Petor, which is by the Euphrates, in the land of his kinsfolk, and said, there's a people that came out of Egypt. It hides the earth from view. It is settled next to me. Come then, put a curse upon this people for me, since they are too numerous for me. Perhaps I can thus defeat them and drive them out of the land, for I know that he who you bless is blessed, and he whom you cursed is cursed. Does that sound like Abraham? Right. So who is Balaam? We have two guys, and their names sound a little alike, so don't get them mixed up. Balak is the king, and Balaam is the wizard. We have here a wizard, Balaam. It's spelled Balaam, but it's Balaam. Balaam is a wizard. So what is his strategy? I can't defeat them militarily. I will use magic. I will use magic. I will get this wizard to come and to curse them. What's he thinking? He's thinking that this guy, Balaam, He whom you blessed is blessed, and he whom you cursed is cursed. This guy, Balaam, he has real power. Power that I can exploit, power that I can use, power that I need right now. Can't find real world solutions to problems, but I can find supernatural, mysterious ways of dealing with this. That's what magic is. Now, you're reading this, you're like, wait. So right now, the story is located in the palace of Balak. We've now broken from the narrative of Israel, and we're seeing the whole story. We're seeing our own story through the eyes of the people we're about to come and conquer. You see what's going on here? That's why this is a really weird narrative. But really what's going on is something very critical, as you'll see in the very next vignette. This is a confrontation of two different worldviews. A conventional worldview, which was held by all of the pagan peoples of the ancient world, and a radical monotheistic worldview. A radical monotheistic worldview, which is going to be represented, of all people, by Balaam the wizard. So here's what happens. The elders of Moab and the elders of Midian, versed in divination, set out. They came to Balaam, and they gave him Balak's message. He said, what's the message? Come with me and curse this people for me. All right? Come and curse the people. And he says to them, spend the night. I shall reply to you as the Lord instructs me. Now, God gets stuck in here. And by the way, the word Lord here is not Elohim, which is what you'd expect it to be. Elohim is the God of the world. This is Adonai. This is Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh. This is the God of Israel. Notice Balaam has some connection with the God of Israel. And you'll see his connection in a moment. So the Moabite dignitaries stayed that night. God came to, this is now Elohim, God came to Balaam and said, what do these people want of you? Which is, by the way, an interesting question for God to ask, right? Wouldn't you imagine God already knows? But I think the question is deeper than that, right? What's really the question? Which is really like, what do you want to do? Like, who are you? God says to him, what do you want to do? So Balaam has this real intimacy, even though he's not a Jew. He's not an Israelite. He has this intimacy with God that like only Moses has, right? Only Moses has such an intimacy. So Balaam says, Balak, son of Zippor, king of Moab, sent me this message. Here is a people that came out of Egypt and hides the earth from view. Come now and curse them for me. Perhaps I can engage them in battle and drive them off. It's not exactly what he said, but okay. But God said to Balaam, don't go with them. You must not curse this people, for they are blessed.
So God recognizes the power of Balaam if he tells him don't curse them.
Don't curse them, because they're already blessed. But what does that mean? They're blessed? You can't curse them, but they're already blessed? You see what's going on here? What does that mean? It's a little, you see the strangeness of this? So Balaam arose in the morning, and he said to them, go back to your own country, for the Lord will not let me go with you. And the Moabite left. They accepted that. And they came back to the king. Balaam refused. Right? So if you're the king of Moab, you have 3.5 million Jews on your front lawn, and you're terrified, and the guy won't come. Anyone see The Godfather? You put an ass head in his bed. You make an offer he can't refuse. Right? If you're Magic Johnson, Magic again, the story, and you're trying to get a certain basketball player from Cleveland to move to L.A., how do you do it? And he says, I won't come. I like it here in Cleveland. My wife and kids are here in Cleveland. I love them. I love my teammates here. He doesn't love his teammates, but that's okay. What do you do? Then Balak sent other dignitaries, more numerous and distinguished than the first. Make a better offer, right? They came to Balaam and they said, thus says Balak, son of Zippor, do not refuse to come. I will reward you richly to come to me. I reward and do anything you ask of me. Only come and damn this people for me. And Balaam replied to Balak's officials, though Balak were to give me his house full of silver and gold, I could not do anything big or little contrary to the commandment of the Lord. So that should be enough, right? That's what he was told, don't go, and that should be enough, right? Everyone right? Just shake your head like, but look what he says next. He says, so tell you what, Stay here tonight. Let me see what else God has to say. What does that mean? Yeah, no, it's, so, like God said no, but let's see if we can negotiate something, right? Let's see what can be done. Maybe, anyone ever bought a used car, Let me go talk to the sales manager. Maybe we can adjust it. Maybe, no one wants to hear no, especially if a house full of silver and gold is waiting for you back in Moab. So he's going to go handle with God. What is going on here? All right, let's stop for just a second. First of all, what is magic and what is religion? Who is Balaam? Why does the Bible even give us this story? This is just remarkable stuff, right? And what is the Bible's attitude about all this? Let's take a look at the whole thing, right? First of all, the ancient world, according to the pagan isn't a bad word. Pagan just means nature worship. Please come in. Make yourself at home. We got room. Come in.
Did you say it means what?
It's nature worship. Okay? Good. The pagan world imagined that the world was a 3-layer cake. Okay? We live on the bottom. We human beings, we live here. And we're subject to all sorts of forces that are beyond our control. Weather, fortune, stock markets, all kinds of stuff happens to us that's beyond our control, right? Above us is the realm of the gods. For the pagan world, the gods are numerous. There's gods for everything. There's gods for fertility and barrenness. There's gods for rain and sun. There's gods for cold and warmth. Above us is the realm of the gods. And these gods are all sort of at war with each other. There's all this conflict. And we are the subjects, we are the sort of innocent bystanders of the conflicts among the gods. We can't do anything about it. If the gods don't like you, the gods curse you. If the gods don't like you, they're going to make your life miserable. If the gods favor you, you're going to do well. Anyone here ever been to Las Vegas? And you see people going there, and you see them pull the lever, or now you push a button, you don't even pull lever anymore, right? Or you sit at the table, or the little marble goes around the roulette wheel, and people start screaming, right? 32 black, 32 black. Is 32 black or red? I don't know. Whatever. Because what you're doing is appealing to the gods to smile on you. Who knows, maybe this time the cards will come up favorable. But there really is no way to assure that. Well, not exactly. Because there's a third layer. And above the gods, there is a layer of mysterious powers. Right? In the Egyptian world, it was called Ma'at. In the African world, it's called Barak. Okay? In the Greek world, it was the Titans. There is a layer above the gods of super powers. And here's the logic of magic. Ready? The logic of magic is that certain people have certain formulas, certain potions, certain objects that can channel the powers of those superpowers, the Titans, to influence the powers of the gods to reflect well upon us. In other words, we can gain power to manipulate the gods to do our bidding. We can buy off or force, it's not buy off, it's a matter, it's forcing the gods to do what we want them to do. That's called magic. That's the original philosophy of magic. Now, who are these people that have these powers? They're the chosen ones, right? Harry Potter, right? You have Harry Potter, and you know spells and incantations and potions, right? And wait, you have a wand. You can manipulate those upper powers to force the gods to do what you want, even to change the laws of nature. That's called magic. The Magi, the magic man, is the one who has that special power. He lives above and beyond the rest of us because he can get the gods to do and he can force them. Those potions and spells and incantations and magic wands force the gods to do what we want. So magic is a way of getting the divine, the spiritual realm, to manipulate it, to control it, to get it to do what we want it to do. That is the logic of magic. That's the logic of magic. That's what Balak, the king of Moab, thinks he's buying. And inasmuch, and here's the Bible sort of winking at us, the idea is that Balaam, this is completely amoral. It's not a question of is it right or wrong. It's not a question of should they be blessed or should they be cursed. It's not a question of who belongs in the world and who doesn't belong. You can buy this. It's a question of manipulating it for your own purposes. You can have whatever you want. You can manipulate it for your own purposes. That's the amoral quality of magic. Right? Did you ever wonder why Voldemort has so much power? If he's such a bad guy? You know what I'm talking about in Harry Potter? That's our generation's liturgy. So you have to know the scripture of your generation. I mean, why? And why does it? And Snape is the professor. This is his title, which I think you and I should have one day. Defense against the dark arts. Why do you need defense against the dark arts? Because the powers of magic are amoral. They have no morality. They don't care whether you're good or evil. They only care if you said the potion, if you said the incantation right. Right? That's the early part of Harry Potter when they keep getting the spells wrong and they turn people into frogs by accident because you said the wrong words, right? But it doesn't matter whether that's moral or amoral. That is the conventional worldview. That's the worldview of Balaam. That's the worldview of the whole world, except the Bible comes along and makes fun of this. Because the Bible offers a radical alternative. And what's the radical alternative of the Bible? It's not a 3-layer world, it's a 2-layer world. Our world and God, that's it. That's all that is. There are not many gods, they're not at war with each other, and there is nobody above the God who can force God to do what we want him to do. And this God that we worship is moral. This God is looking out for what's right and wrong, for what's holy and impure. You can't force God to do what you want him to do. What you can do is ask, and sometimes God will do it, and sometimes God won't. And second of all, you can't force God to do what you want him to do. Your job in life is to align your will with God's will. I mean, the only magic that occurs in monotheism is what the Pirkei Avot says, which is if you make your will God's will, then God's will be your will. If you align your will with God, if you do the commandments of God, then you will live a godly life. Then God will do everything you want, because you'll be doing what God wants done in the world. But there's no magic to this. You can't force God. You can't force God to do stuff, right? And by the way, magic is built into us, because people still, first of all, look at Las Vegas, right? But more than that, people come to me all the time, and every rabbi knows this. They'll come to us all the time and say, Rabbi, a lady came to me once, I hope it wasn't one of you, and said, she needed something, somebody was sick, she wanted me to sell her a red string for $26. I said, I'll give you one for free. I'll give you a whole box of red string for $26. She said, no, I want one of those red strings. Because there are rabbis in this city who will sell you red strings that will make God do what you want God to do for $26. And I told her, it don't work that way. It don't work that way. When she was very upset with me. She thought that, Balaam, she offered me double. She offered me $52. She figured it's Encino, I don't want a plain red string. I want a Lexus red string, I want a Maserati red string, for $104, But there's still inside of us this need. I want it to come out my way. You see the problem? So Balaam says to I can't do this. Balaam now understands that he can't make God curse this people. God said no. But the king says, all right, I'll double the pay. He says, all right, maybe I can. Let's see. Let's see what happens. Let's see what happens. You with me? So where are we?
You're coming to the talking donkey.
I'm coming there. I know it's your favorite part, right? That night, God came to Balaam. God, look at verse 20, 896. God came to Balaam and said, if these men have come to invite you, go with them. But whatever I command you, that you're going to do. Now, I have to ask you that question. Did God really say that? First of all, if God said that, why did God say? If God said don't go, and now God says go. Number one, did God really say that? So you could say, yeah, God said that, in the same way that my mother, after I would whine at her and whine at her and whine at her, would finally say to me, after telling me 3 times it's a bad idea to do what I wanted to do, she told me, okay, do whatever you want. Did your mother ever say that to you? And you went off with a half-hearted knowing that this is going to get me in trouble, but now that you told me to do whatever I want, I got to actually go do it, right? Do whatever you want. That's one theory. The second theory is, right, God told him don't go. He keeps begging and whining God. This is his own fantasy. God didn't tell him to go. He wanted to go. You can manipulate what you can rearrange people's words in your head. This is his fantasy. This is his fantasy. But after all, what is the question at heart here? God doesn't want him to go, and he wants to go. So what is he going to try to do? Get God to do what he wants him to do. This is all about manipulating God. And the whole Torah portion says what? You can't manipulate God. It's a different world. That's not the way the world works. Now, because he didn't get it the time God said to him, now we're going to introduce Rabbi Gelman's favorite character, right? When he arose in the morning, Balaam saddled his ass and departed with the Moabite dignitaries. But God was incensed at his going. And so an angel of the Lord placed himself in his way as an adversary. He was riding on the she-ass with his 2 servants alongside when the ass caught sight of the angel, and the Lord standing in the way, with his sword drawn in his hand. The ass swerved from the road, went into the fields. Balaam beat the ass to turn her back into the road. The angel of the Lord then stationed himself in a lane between a vineyard with a fence on either side. The ass, seeing the angel of the Lord, pressed herself against the wall and squeezed Balaam's foot against the wall. So he beat her again. Once again, the angel moved forward and stationed himself on a spot so narrow there was no room to swerve right or left. And when the ass saw that the angel of the Lord, she lay down under Balaam, and Balaam was furious and beat him with a stick. Isn't it a great story?
Well, wait, there's more.
This is called dramatic. I'm trying to build the drama here, Gelman.
The stupidest story in the Torah.
No, on the contrary. On the contrary. This is one of the most brilliant stories in the Torah. What is Balaam? Balaam is a seer. That's how you say magic man in the Bible. He is a seer. He sees what people can't see. Except in this case, what can he see? Nothing. And an ass sees more than him. He's dumber than an ass. Right? And the ass, and he keeps beating it. I mean, this is a brilliant story because he wants to
Go to the talking snake.
I'm coming.
If you like this, we got a talking snake.
I know. That's the other great story in the Bible. Because Balaam's conceit is, I control it all. This is the conceit of control. I control it all. It's my power. I can curse those I want to curse and bless those I want to bless. I can manipulate the world. And the Bible laughs and says, you think you can manipulate the world. And you think, first of all, your manipulation can be bought. So what value is that? That your magic goes to the highest bidder. Number one. The Talmud, by the way, has a wonderful statement about Balaam. Like, what kind of man is Balaam? It says, Ish below a man who has no nation, a man with no loyalties, a man with no community to whom he is loyal, a man with no moral foundation, a man who is not fighting for something that is important in the world, a man who is prepared to sell his powers to the highest bidders. That's what magic is. It's not a moral crusade to do what is right in the world, however you define right. It is a person who sells his powers to the highest bidder. Number two, right? Do you remember, by the way, just as an aside to bring it back, remember Dana Carville and Carville, the political guy. James Carville, and what's his wife's name? Mary Madeline. So she's the biggest Republican political manipulator, handler, and he's the biggest Democrat, and they're married to each other. Now that's a hell of a household. Which proves to you that political operations are fundamentally corrupt, because there's no sense that this is what my life is about. I'm fighting for passion. I'm fighting for power. I'm fighting for the conceit that people look up to me and say, woo, you're somebody special, Balaam. That's the first thing. But more than that, he thinks he can control. He can't even control a donkey. He can't even get his donkey to do what he wants him to do, much less control the conditions of human existence. That's the worth of magic, says the Bible. And now it gets even better. Now comes Rabbi Gelman's favorite part. This is why he woke up this morning and showered and came to shul. Then the Lord opened the ass's mouth. Because, of course, Balaam, how does Balaam manipulate? Through his words. And he thinks his words are golden and magic and can change the world. Well, the donkey's words can change the world. Any ass's words can change. The donkey opened his mouth and she said to Balaam, what have I done to you that you beat me 3 times? Which is right, by the way, that's the moral question.
But it's from a donkey.
Yes, because sometimes you need a donkey to tell you what's right and wrong.
But they don't.
Because if you're a
they
bigger...
don't talk. They have never talked.
This one does.
No.
Yes, because you gotta be a bigger ass than the donkey you're riding on.
No. This is Torah for morons.
No. This is brilliant Torah.
No.
Because there are people who walk among us who are dumber, more conceited, more stubborn, more foolish than a donkey.
But they aren't donkeys.
Yes, they are.
No, they aren't.
Morally, they are donkeys.
No one in your shul is a donkey.
That's true.
In my shul, we had some donkeys.
Oh. Be careful, you're on TV. All over the world.
Back of my head.
All over the world.
Who's ever seen my face?
We will never say that it's Gelman from Long Island.
But it's the other girl.
As the FBI's, your identity is safe here.
Oh, man, that is cold.
What have you done that you've beaten me 3 times? The donkey asks the moral question. You want to hit. Because in order to control, you have to use power. And you never stop and think who your power is hurting. You just use power to accomplish what you want, to achieve and that's a conceit, because there's no morality behind the conduct of your power. And the donkey can see that. And the donkey says, what did I ever do to you? And Balaam said, by the way, Balaam talks back like it's a normal thing to be talking to your, and I know much of you talk to your cards that way, but that's okay. It's like Siri, and you made a mockery of me. The donkey made a, all right. If I had a sword with me, I'd kill you. Did anybody see an irony in that statement? He's going to destroy the people Israel with his words, but if he needs a sword in order to punish the donkey. Did anybody see an irony in that? Okay, just in case you didn't, right? The ass said to Balaam, I love this. Look, the donkey says, look, let's reason together. Come on. I am the ass you've been riding all along until this day, right? I'm your friend. I'm your mode of transportation. I'm the way you get around, right? Have I ever been in the habit of doing this to you before? Like the donkey's like reasoning on a level higher than Balaam, right? And he says, no, right? That never happened before. And the donkey, and now the donkey stops talking because the next line is then, Schmuck, why do you think I'm doing this? And then the Lord uncovered Balaam's eyes, and he saw the angel of the Lord standing in the way. And his sword in his hand. The angel has a sword. And he bowed. And the angel Lord said, why have you beaten your ass 3 times? It is I who came out as an adversary, for the errand is obnoxious to me. It's God speaking through the angel. And when the ass saw me, she shied away, because these 3 times, if she had not shied away, you're the one I would have killed. The donkey saved your life, fool. You who use your powers with no compunctions, with no reservations, with no consideration of the morality of that power. Because it's someone offered to buy you, because it gives you the conceit that you're a special person in the world, because you can use your words. This is who you are. And suddenly it comes down. If she'd not shied away, you're the one I would have killed. She saved your life. And Balaam said, I erred because I didn't know you were standing. No. It's not because you erred because you didn't know I was there. You erred because your ego. Because magic is an extension of ego. It's what I want. Magic is the little child screaming, I want, I want, I want. That's what magic is. It's not a careful moral consideration of what the world needs from me right now. The angel says, okay, go. But you'll say nothing except what I tell you. So Balaam went. I think it's a wonderful story. I think it really is a story about the conceit of power and ego, and the way that power in many ways corrupts because there's no morality to this. Don't you think it's a good story? You don't like the story.
Yeah, it's a good story
Okay.
if you understand
Yeah.
that donkeys don't talk.
Don't you think most people understand that?
I begin to wonder.
Okay, all right. Fair enough.
So here's the point.
Okay, go ahead.
Here's the point.
Yeah.
You have a choice when you read this.
Right.
Torah.
Right.
Especially when you get up early every Saturday morning to read it.
Right.
There's got to be a reason
Right.
to do this.
Okay.
And to me, just to me,
Yeah.
the only reason is that it's true.
Uh-huh.
This book is true.
Okay.
If I didn't believe it was true, I'd get up early Saturday maybe and read Proust, or I might read Lawrence, or I might read something else that I love, but not this.
Okay.
But I get up to read this because I believe it's true. Now, God understood that there would come a time when there would be a Gelman who would get up, and who would read it only because it's true.
Okay.
Not because it's an old book, it was handed down by generations, but because this is the repository of the truth that will save people and the world.
Right.
And the reason it is that it's given by God.
Right.
Now, in my other hat as a professor of philosophy, in order for something to be true, it has to be rational. That means it can't confront reason in a variety of ways.
Mhm.
The Torah presents us with a challenge then. How can it be true if it includes things that manifestly are not true and cannot be true?
Okay.
Now there's various categories of an assault on truth that the Torah presents us with.
Okay.
Things that are difficult but possible. Splitting of the Red Sea doesn't really violate any natural laws. If wind could divide it, and there could be some naturalistic explanations for almost all of the plagues.
Right.
But talking snakes and talking donkeys is over the line.
Okay.
It isn't something that's really hard. It's something that could never happen.
Right.
So now the Torah, so now your choice is, how can you reconcile talking donkeys and other irrational parts of the Torah
Right.
with the truth?
Okay.
So the answer comes from the greatest philosopher that Judaism ever produced, the only philosopher in the top 100, and that's Rambam, Maimonides. For Maimonides, in his Moreh Nevuchim, in his Guide for the Perplexed, he speaks about how God connects with people in the Seichel HaPoel, which is an active intellect that brings
Yeah, okay.
the truth
Go,
to people.
go ahead.
And he says, this is the way it is.
Okay.
If you don't believe this,
Yeah.
you are like a person who believes that donkeys can talk.
Mm-hmm.
So, he presents us with this choice.
Yeah.
We cannot be Jewish. We cannot be intelligent Jews. And we cannot be learned disciples of the Torah.
Right.
Unless we are prepared to say about some parts of the Torah,
Right.
this is not true. The Torah is a mixed document.
Okay.
It contains within it things that were never true.
Okay, so let me just try to respond. I think it's a very good point. Except it's a question of what you mean by, is it true?
Did it happen?
But hang on a second. Maimonides writes in the 12th century, after Judaism has come into contact with Aristotelian philosophy through the Arabic culture, right?
Through the
The,
multicolored.
the Bible doesn't have a vocabulary, a philosophical vocabulary,
Correct.
but it's dealing with philosophical ideas.
Right.
How do you express philosophical ideas if you don't have a philosophical vocabulary? You write parables. You write stories, and you use the story as a way of communicating profound and deep ideas in manner which any rational person recognizes it's a parable. You're right. Of course you're right. Any rational person reads this and says, donkeys don't talk. And the next line is, and therefore I'm reading a parable. And what is the parable about? Well, the parable seems to me to be about something really profound. Do I have any power in the world? Is power moral or amoral? Right? Is there such thing as magic? Are there powers in the world that I can gain for myself and exploit and manipulate and turn to my own will in order to accomplish my ends? Or is there a God in the world, and ultimately, maybe not at the moment, but ultimately, history will obey the rules that God has set in the world? This is a profound set of issues, right? And I think that what you have here is the same thing with the talking snake and the burning bush and the splitting sea. You have things that any rational person who lives in the world knows can't happen, but you say, that's when I know I'm being told a parable. And the parable, and I have to ask myself then, what is the deeper truth of said parable? And I think this is a remarkable, deep story about the conceit of power. And understanding that if power doesn't conform to a certain set of rules about justice and morality, it will destroy us all. I mean, that line that says, had the donkey not sat down, I would have killed you, is the parable's way of saying, if you don't find the rules of God in the world and follow them, you're going to destroy everything that's valuable to you. I think that's a profound. I think so, and I think that's true. That's true.
But
Yeah.
then you have to reject
Okay, yeah.
parts of the Torah
Well,
as happening.
as happening literally, sure, but not as happening all around me. Hang on, let's get a comment, please. Yeah,
Yeah, thank you, Rabbi. I just wanted to follow up with
Please.
the comment because I agree with you 100%.
you're a very wise lady.
That's why I'm coming here.
Yeah, you're getting wiser. See.
So, I immigrated from Ukraine, and a lot of our neighbors' friends immigrated from all over the world.
Yeah.
So I called one time one of my former neighbors who are now adults, and he lives in Germany with his family.
Yeah.
And I said, how are you doing in Germany? Okay, they don't accept us, this, that, whatever. So I said, do you go to the synagogue now that you're a free Jew? He says, I went to synagogue a couple of times, studied world literature overall, then you have to accept the fact that a lot of, let's say, well, I like Dostoevsky and that whole story. So when you look at, for example, Crime and Punishment, it's a novel, obviously, but the novel stands for a lesson.
Yeah.
Right? Where Raskolnikov is sitting there and saying, I killed this old lady, she's just an old lady, she's irrelevant, she's mean, she's this, she's that. But at the end, Raskolnikov comes to the conclusion that this murder was completely, he spends his whole life that the murder was unjustified. So it is a fairy tale, it is a story, but I'm saying, when I agree with you, that to human beings, in order to teach them any lesson, the easiest way to teach is through a parable, through, if you want to call it a fairy tale, that's fine.
Yeah.
If you want to call it an allegory, that's fine.
Yeah.
But human beings absorb information much better
Yeah.
when you go down to teach them through, in a way, of children.
Okay.
story.
It's narrative. I mean, that's how we gain wisdom. Yes, please, Mrs. Abrams. Could you speak a little louder, please?
book called The whole book was written in the language of animals.
Yeah.
But I think what Rabbi Tillman means is because we say Torah is the word of God and
Right.
it's history and things that really happen. Maybe
Right.
This story doesn't belong in the Torah. It could have been said, like a fable, but when you present it as something with other stories in
Right.
the Torah, that makes people wonder.
Well, this story, by the way, as I said at the very beginning, is a very strange story because it breaks from the flow of the narrative that we're used to hearing. So far, we haven't talked about anybody Jewish. The whole story is about Balaam and Balak, and it feels like a separate literary unit that has been dropped into the Torah, right? I think that what's happening, and I said this before, is that I think that what we have here is a meditation, a philosophical meditation on an issue which is going to become very important to the Israelites and to the Jewish people throughout its history when we live among other peoples who see the world in other terms. Because magic is really tempting. Everybody wants to believe in magic. Everyone wants to believe there's some magic word I can say and the light will turn green. Some magic word I can say and the highway patrolman behind me will disappear. Some magic word I can say and the cancer will disappear. Everyone wants to believe that. And the Torah says that's not the way of the world. That's not the way the world works. Right? I think this is a tremendously deep and interesting, and because you have to understand, and the reasons why. It's such a temptation. I have to tell you, the lady by the way, in the end, I sold her a whole case of string for 20 cents. No, I didn't do that. And people want to make prayer into magic. If I say the prayer, right? Close my eyes real hard. Oh, Lord, please give me a parking place. Mine. Right? How many people said, cure my loved one, I'll keep kosher for a year. I mean, this is what happens when religion becomes magic. Or God forbid, the tragedy happened because the mezuzah was defective. That's magic. And the Torah says that's not the way it works. Yes, please.
It strikes me that Sam encountered is most similar to this story.
Yeah.
Is Dr. Seuss. There's stories of Dr. Seuss, which are basically very similar to the same story.
Yeah.
There's Yertle the turtle.
Yeah.
There's a story I know about this bear who claims he can smell farther than anything.
Yeah. Yertle the turtle was Dr. Seuss's parable about Hitler.
And they're all featured talking animals.
Yeah. That was his political parable, because the idea that he wanted to get higher than everybody by stacking up all the turtles. Yes, please.
So how do you explain Kabbalah and some Kabbalists that through their whatever, either rituals or
Yeah.
mystical action,
Right.
they change the turn of things?
Yes, so that's the difference between genuine Kabbalah and phony Kabbalah. Genuine Kabbalah is a search to understand God's ways in the world. Kabbalah, which means the received tradition, it's the mystical tradition, is a way of understanding a different way of how God enters the world and God is in the world and how the world is put together. It is a search for understanding. When people turn it into something called practical Kabbalah, which means I can make you rich, I can make you thin, I can make anything happen using the spells and incantation, that's magic. That's idolatry. That's when Rabbi Gelman speaks about Maimonides. Maimonides spent his whole career fighting against that. Because the presumption is, as I said a moment ago, that I can say some magic word and God will have to do what I want him to do. Whenever you think you can control God, you become God. And that's the worship of self. That's the worship of ego. And that's idolatry. And that's not real Kabbalah. And if somebody sells it to you or promises it to you, it's really tempting. My God, take 2 pills, eat waffles and fudge all day long, you will guaranteed to lose weight. Guaranteed! 9 out of 10 doctors tested clinical proof that if you eat waffles and fudge and take these 2 pills before you go to sleep tonight, you don't need to diet, you don't need to exercise, you don't need to change anything about your life, and you will look like a supermodel in the morning. Anybody buying? That's magic. It's the same thing. It's the same thing. Come on, and if I say it in Aramaic, is it any different? If I say it, listen, and don't get me wrong. My mother died of cancer. You don't think I prayed? You don't think I begged? You don't think I asked? You don't think I searched? You don't think it pained me? I have all these books in my office, and I can't figure out, is there any... Yes, there's a book, and it tells me what to do. I sat with her, and we talked, and we talked, and we talked. And I think I gave her a little bit of comfort and strength. Yes, that's what I can do. Rifuat ha-nefesh, rifuat ha-guf. I can heal the soul. I can't heal the body. My friend who's an oncologist can, because he understands the biochemistry of the disease, but even he said to me, I can't fix this. Don't you think, and I want it like everybody else wants it. Hell, of course I want it like everybody else wants it. But the Torah says that that's a worship of the ego. Because then you'll start wanting to mess. Look what he wants to do here. He wants to destroy a people who only want to cross through his land. You ever ask yourself 2 questions? One, why doesn't the king of Moab say, welcome? You're home. Welcome home. You want to see something interesting? Just as a moment. I know you want to get onto the Torah. I know I see all of your hands. Page 1122. Page 1122. This is going to be Moses' later reflection on this event. Look at page 1122. It's Deuteronomy 23. Page 1122. Okay? The last line on the page. Chapter 23, verse 4. No Ammonite or Moabite shall ever be admitted into the congregation of the Lord. None of their descendants, even the 10th generation, will ever be admitted. We have a curse against these people. Why? Why are we so angry at Ammonites? Because you see at the end of the paragraph, it says you're supposed to be nice to Egyptians. Egyptians who threw your kids into the Nile, them you're nice to, but Moabites, what did they do? Listen to the next line. Because they did not meet you with food and water on your journey after you left Egypt. Because they hired Balaam, son of Beor, from Petor of Aram Naharaim, to curse you. But the Lord, we'll get to this part. I didn't give the end. The Lord refused to heed Balaam. Instead, the Lord turned curse into blessing. Moab should have said, welcome home, brothers. Welcome home, brothers. And what would have happened? Right? Anybody ever hear of a man named Faisal Husseini? He was murdered by the Mufti of Jerusalem. Faisal Husseini was the nephew of the most powerful Muslim leader, Arab leader in Palestine in the 1920s, and he sent a letter to Chaim Weizmann, who was the president of the World Zionists, and said, my brother, welcome home. I look forward to building our common homeland together. With Arab strength and Jewish brains, we will build a paradise in the Middle East. Welcome home. That could have been our history. But he was murdered by the Mufti because, and Balak could have done the same thing. He could have said, brother, welcome home. And we would have had a different history. But that's not what he did. So this is the temptation of magic, is to destroy my enemies. This is why it becomes idolatry. In the back.
I think you're limiting the interpretation by focusing on magic.
Yeah, probably.
You said before is just ability.
Yeah.
Whatever your economic level, whatever your skills, whatever your position,
Yeah.
using it on behalf of others
Yeah.
is the broader application of the interpretation, which I agree with.
Yeah. So if you want to get even deeper than that, the whole logic of this is us and them. It's our people and those people. It's when you adopt because it's policy based on fear. It's us and them. And when you adopt an us and them worldview, you end up with something horrible. You just destroy. The great task of life is to figure out how it's us, all us. Because then you start using your powers to manipulate and to destroy and to overcome. I mean, it's an exploitative personality. It's an exploitative way of life. Yes, please.
You mentioned that this God that Balaam is talking about is the God of Israel.
Yeah, Adonai. He uses the name Adonai. Yeah.
Later he says, my God.
Yeah, because he apparently so. Because God's talking to him. God's talking, and the Talmud says he's as great a prophet as Moses, except he works for the other team. Right? I mean, that's an interesting point of view. Did you want to say something? You had your hand up a moment ago. Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. Douglas, I can see him out of the corner of my eye. Thank you. Thank you.
I wonder whether this is easier to understand as truth than the second part that you just pointed to, where they're saying that we're going to impact the sin on the 10th generation.
Oh, yeah.
Because when you're sitting there confronting immorality in
Yeah,
the Torah,
yeah.
you can see the same thing in the Ten Commandments, where it says,
Oh, yeah.
I'm going to ascribe kindness to thousands of generations.
Right.
And the third and fourth generation.
See, that's
harder to understand.
that's where I agree with Rabbi Gelman completely. I think that this story doesn't bother me because it's a parable. But the question that Rabbi Gelman raises is a really, really very deep question. What happens when I read something that morally offends me in the Torah?
Like you just did.
And then what do I do? No question. So then I got to figure out what to do. Do I read it? Do I take it out of its context? Do I try to mitigate it? Do I observe it even though I can't stand it? I mean, there is a certain kind of religious personality that says, geschrieben, it's written, and I have to do it even if I think it's immoral. But that, to me, is not the intention of the text, because, as the Rabbi is quoting, there is a section in Deuteronomy in chapter 8 where it says, if you reach a point that you can't quite, a point of a law that you don't understand, bring it to the elder of the land, and he'll understand it, he'll interpret it for you. And the Talmudic tradition. Look, the Bible says an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. Any child will tell you the problem with that. You end up with two blind, toothless men, right? So the Talmud right away says, no, it doesn't mean that literally. Right away. The Mechilta says that. Early Midrash. In other words, you've got to read this intelligently. You can't turn off your intelligence when you read text. Text demands intelligence and moral imagination and moral criticism. The text doesn't want you just to obey. The text wants you to argue, to debate, to search. Take another look with me. Let's finish. I want to get to the blessing. Give me a second. Chapter 23. Ready? Balaam says to Balak. No, hang on. Top of 899. When Balak heard that Balaam was coming, the king hears the wizard's coming. He went out to meet him. And he said, when I first invited you, why didn't you come? Am I unable to reward you? What, you think I'm cheap, right? And the wizard says to the king, I've come. Have I the power to speak freely? I can utter only the word that God puts in my mouth. You don't understand, guy. I don't have powers. I'm just a vessel. But the king doesn't want to believe that. He just hired a wizard. He wants a wizard. He wants a real wizard. And the guy keeps saying, you don't understand. I'm just a vessel. I'm a conduit. Right? So he says, okay, what do you want me to do? He says, build me 7 altars with 7 bulls. That's a lot of animals. So Balak did as he said. On page 900, top of the page. Right? And he builds them the 7 altars, and they offer the 7 sacrifices, and he stands up, and instead of blessing the people Israel, instead of cursing the people Israel, he blesses them. And the blessing is this poetic section at the bottom. Right? From Aram, Balak has brought me, Moab's king from the hills of the east. You say one thing, and then you say something very similar, almost completely parallel in the second line. Okay, it's A prime, B prime. You hear it? Come curse me, Jacob. Come tell Israel's doom. You see how that works? Say the same thing in different words, right? How can I damn whom God has not damned? How doom when God has not doomed? As I see them from the mountaintops, gaze on them from the heights, there's a people that dwells apart, not reckoned among the nation. Who can count the dust of Jacob? Remember when Abraham's and Jacob's blessing was, your kids will be like the dust of the earth. They'll be too numerous to count. Number the dust cloud of Israel. May I die the death of the earth. May my fate be like theirs. And so the king runs to him and says, Schmuck, I hired you to curse them, and you bless them. Right? I'll tell you what. And then he keeps telling him, but I can only do what God tells me to do. But the king doesn't believe him. So he takes him to another spot and says, all right, do it from here. Maybe if I change the spot, I'll change your orientation. Because gods are located. And if I change the spot, I'll change the orientation. So he turns up at a different spot, turn the page. And here, up Balak attend, give ear to meet son of Tzibor. God is no man to be capricious or mortal to change his mind. Who's he talking to? He's talking to the king. He's saying, this instead of blessing or cursing, he turns to the king and he says, you don't understand how this works. It's not the world you think it is, right? Or mortal to change his mind. Would he speak and not act? Promise and not fulfill? My message was to bless. When he blesses, I can't reverse it. No harm is in sight for Jacob. No woe in view for Israel. The Lord their God is with them. The kings acclaim in their midst. And he goes on, right? And then the king just loses it. Because he spent all this money to bring this guy over. And instead of cursing him, now he's giving them blessing after blessing after blessing. And they keep repeating the same formula. This is also, by the way, a very funny, if the whole chapter is a very funny meditation about magic and wizardry, this is a very funny meditation about politics. Political leaders will make the same mistake over and over and over again. Why? Because they save face, right? How many times did Pharaoh change his mind? 11 times, right? So he tries one more time, right? One more time, and he does it again. And he tries one more time, right? And as he goes through, where's Matovo Halecha? Is it one, what, 904? 904, line 5, right. So look at 904. This is the most famous one. Word of Balaam, son of Beor, word of the man whose eye is true, word of him who hears God's speech, who beholds visions from Almighty, prostrate, which means he bows down, but with eyes unveiled. Matovu ahalecha Yaakov, mishkenotecha Yisrael. How fair are your tents, Jacob, your dwelling places, Israel. And he goes on and he blesses it. That's the end of the story. Then, by the way, you go to, at the end of the story, we go back to the regular narrative, which is as we're approaching the peoples that surround the homeland, we start to have interactions with them. And they're very unfortunate interactions. But this whole piece is a literary unit. And it's a meditation on this issue of magic. It's a meditation on the use of power politics. But most of all, it's an image, it's a metaphysical statement about how the world is set up. About using, manipulating, and projecting the powers of the ego into the world. And the answer is, if you do that, if you worship the self to that extent, you will destroy the self. The only way to save the self is to humble the self before that which is greater, which is a God of justice. And that's the message. Good message for the 4th of July, wouldn't you say? Right? We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men and women are created equal and endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, and among them life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
You know what the first verse
Wait, just but before, yeah, I know. But but I don't want to ruin it, so leave it alone. I'm trying to be inspiring here, Gelman. I know what it's property. Go ahead.
We hold these truths to be sacred was Jefferson's first text,
Yeah.
and Franklin changed it.
Can I make a suggestion? On the 4th of July, which is Wednesday, read the first paragraph of the Declaration of Independence. Look it up online. It's easy to find. And just read the first paragraph, right, in the preamble of the Constitution, because we have been blessed to be in this moment of history and to live in this place. And those are sacred words. If there ever were people who attuned their lives and their minds and their conscience to the presence of God, a God of justice in the world, it was the founding fathers of this republic. And their words are sacred words. So read them out loud on Wednesday or Tuesday night, which is Erev Yontif, right? Right. Have a great Shabbat. Take care. Shabbat Shalom.
Also, with respect to the discourse that's going on in the country, read Federalist 10.
Well, Federalist 10, Federalist 51, Federalist...
10 is the one with the factions.
Yeah.